If you're a beekeeper in the Southeast right now, you're buying a lot of this. Today I'd like to show you how I make sugar water when I'm feeding my bees during the summer dearth in the Southeast. So what I start with is just a 2-gallon bucket. I got this little paddle on Amazon. It just goes on my drill. In the Southeast, we experience a dearth, at least in my state, South Carolina. Usually starts around the middle of June and goes through the end of August. Sometimes there's a nectar flow that happens in September. But over the summer, if we don't feed our bees, they can starve to death. They'll eat up everything that I left them after I took off the honey and be out of reserves by the end of the summer. So we're buying a lot of sugar. And it's funny because everybody's comparing, like, where's the cheapest sugar this week? Where's the cheapest sugar this week? Because you end up buying quite a bit of sugar depending on how many hives you have, but your hives can go through quite a bit of sugar water in the course of a week. And there's a lot of different ways to feed it and all, and I'm not going to go into any of that today. I just thought I'd show you, because a lot of my students that take my beekeeping classes ask me, well, how do you make sugar water? And the first thing I want to say about sugar water is this, is it doesn't have to be exact. If you're getting out your teaspoons to measure the sugar to get it exact, then you're probably overthinking the whole thing. Nectar is a lot thinner than what we call 1-to-1 sugar water. When we say 1-to-1 sugar water, we're meaning 1 part sugar to 1 part water, either by volume or by weight. And so if you put the same amount of volume, which is what I do, as I do water, that's close enough. It doesn't have to be exact. And if it's a little too thin, if it's not a full 1-to-1, if it's half as thin as that, the bees will still take it. It's just the way that they treat it is differently. So the thicker it is, the closer it is to honey. And the closer it is to honey, the more apt they're going to be to store the sugar water. The thinner it is, then the more they're going to treat it like nectar. 1-to-1 is kind of that happy medium between the thinness of nectar and the thickness of 2-to-1. So in my area anyway, I just feed 1-to-1 sugar water all year long. Very rarely, maybe once in a while in the fall, if I have a light hive, I'll give them some 2-to-1 to thicken up their stores a little bit for the winter time. But I just want to say it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to show you how I make it in bulk for my bees, and this makes a couple of gallons of sugar water, and that should be enough for most backyard beekeepers, and maybe this will be helpful to you. So you don't have to heat up water, just use warm water right out of the tap. So what I start with is just a 2-gallon bucket, and I put a little bit of water in the bottom of the bucket so that the sugar doesn't stick to the bottom. I just put hot water, warm water in there. I'm going to go ahead and put my sugar. So that's 10 pounds. A gallon of water weighs 8 pounds. And so I'm going to put a little bit more sugar in there. You can see that I almost filled it up. And put a little bit more sugar in there. I have a half a bag there. So now I'm about 3/4 of the way full of sugar. You can see there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put warm water in it. And while that water is going in, I got this little paddle on Amazon. It just goes on my drill. And I just mix it up. Make sure I get all the sugar off at the bottom, and I'll stop putting water in it while I mix it, and then once I get it mixed, all the sugar is dissolved, then I'll go ahead and put a little bit more water in it. I'm going to go ahead and fill it up with water. Just mix that water in with the sugar water, hopefully without spilling a lot of it. That gives me about 2 gallons of sugar water. And then I bought this at a big box store like Walmart, 2.5 gallons. Works great. I can take it from hive to hive and just fill up the frame feeders inside. So I'll put the sugar water. Sometimes when I get to the end like this, I'll just do one last mix in case there's any sugar on the bottom. There really wasn't this time. Usually rinse the bucket out and put the rest of it in there. This is kind of important. I rinse this off because when I'm out in the field, I don't want to attract a lot of bees for any spilled sugar water. And there we go. I have 1-to-1 sugar water. If I wanted to shake it up a bit more, I could, but that's all there really is to it. And again, it doesn't need to be exact, but that's how I make sugar water. One more side note, if you don't need as 2 gallons of sugar water, because it can ferment if you leave it out too long. If you don't need that much, you can just take a quart jar like this, fill it up with sugar, fill it up with warm water, put the top on. My top has a couple of holes that the bees feed through. I just put my fingers over them. I just shake it until all the water is dissolved, put a little bit more water in it, and you can just make a quart jar. If you just have 1 or 2 hives, this is probably all that you'll want to make at a time. In my area of the country, if you leave the sugar water in more than 3 or 4, 5 days worth of sugar water that the bees can take in that amount of time, it will start to ferment. So you can just make a smaller amount with a quart jar. Now I'll take this out to the hives and put it inside the frame feeders. This is Ray from Honey Top Bees. I just want to encourage you, would you mind doing me a favor and like my channel and also subscribe to my channel? My channel is rather new, although I've been beekeeping for a while, and so I could use every like and subscribe I could get. So I appreciate you helping me out a little bit. And I'm going to continue to make videos to encourage you in your beekeeping journey.